government themselves are the engineers and the people that are involved. It's people that work for the government and often defense contractors.
Well, yeah, contractors, government entities, agencies.
Right.
I mean, look, the CIA was responsible for locating the ground where Area 51 sits, right? All those years ago. So they would have a role to play. You're right. The commercial world would have a role to play. The defense contractors, others, I'm sure. I mean, it becomes a growing circle of people who would be involved in an effort like that.
But it'd be a fun secret to keep.
It'd be a hell of a secret to keep. But
that would be a fun one.
Yeah.
If you're working on something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, could I tell you some shit.
You go home, the kids say, "What'd you do today, Dad?" And you're like,
I touched metal that's from another planet.
Yeah, I dissected an alien.
They 3D printed model designed to house 3-foot tall creatures from another galaxy.
But but I think we do also tend to imagine. Look, we can only when we look at when Fravor. It was interesting. Fravor looks at the Tic Tac, right? And Dietrich, and they're looking at this and they're trying to interpret it based on what we know right now, right? So our technological limitations, right, kind of define how we imagine things could go, right? But we only know physics in the way that we know it, right? So it is interesting to think about how we put it, which is how you ended up with little green men, right? Well, if they're aliens, they probably look like us, sort of, but let's make them a little different, let's make them 3 foot tall, but. Who knows what the hell it looks like out there, right? And it's just, but I guess, we've explored so little of space, right? I mean, we still don't know what's, in all the oceans, right? We're still surprised when we find something in the oceans.
Well, that's what's fascinating also about these stories, that there seems to be these vehicles that can travel into the water as well. Yeah. And this has been documented by video as well.
Yeah, and that's what they first noticed, right? I mean, with the Tic Tac was they noticed a disturbance in the water, right? The water was roiling, and they said the weather was perfect, right? There were no white caps, there was nothing. There was just this one area of disturbance, and that was the first thing they noticed. And then they saw the whatever it was. But again, I go back to okay, I'm buying what Fravor's selling, right? It's just that then we don't have what's at the end of that dotted line. We don't know what it is, but I'm glad that we're exploring it in a more serious way now. I'm glad that the Pentagon, to at least, and maybe it happens incrementally, right? But at least they've come out now. They said, okay, we have ATIP, or the Advanced Aeronautical Threat Identification Program, which supposedly shut down in 2012 or so, 2012, I think it was. Of course, they didn't shut it down, right? They just put it into a different program, and because the threat was still there, right? There's still concern over, okay, what is flying over particularly sensitive facilities, right? There was that swarming, right? Or the swarm that went around the USS Omaha,
right?
I think,
the ones that look like pyramids.
Yeah, yeah. And so there were like 9 of them, or I think at a maximum there were 9 of them, and they still haven't figured out what the hell that is.
But did those things exhibit in any sort of capabilities that are beyond our imagination? I don't think they operated at an insane
movement. Not necessarily. They disappeared in a way that couldn't be explained, right? And a couple of them appeared to just go into the water. To your point about there's been those incidents.
Transmedium devices.
So and they did have radar imagery on these items, but and I think so. Anyway, what they might be, again, it's nothing was solved as a result of the hearing, right? Obviously, and I think people were excited, and they're always excited when there's going to be something like this in the previous hearing, and this UAP world starts talking, but every hearing ends up the same way in a sense, because we don't get a resolution, which then leads to more suspicion that the government's hiding something, which has always been the case, right? For decades now, that's where it tends to end up. Well, the government's hiding something. They're just not telling us. There is the possibility that they just don't fucking know, right? And rather than holding on to evidence and trying to keep it a secret, which, again, It's tough.
But do you think that if it's ours, like say the Tic Tac is ours, is it possible that the government could create some advanced propulsion system and do so in complete secrecy as well?
Well, that's 19 years ago.
Yes.
And 19 years we hold on to that sort of capability and technology, and for whatever reason don't deploy it.
Right.
Yeah. Look, I mean, as an aside, the CIA, we've got it used to be called Science and Technology, right? It's where they create all the gear, all the amazing things. The Science and Technology Directorate at the agency over the years has developed incredible things, right? Responsible for the U-2, responsible for satellite capabilities, battery technology, right? All the things that they've done over the years. And oftentimes they'd create just sort of gadgetry, right? And I don't want to simplify it and minimize it, but it's important stuff, but, for lack of a better word. And oftentimes there was a concern. We don't want to release this. We don't want to put it out in the field to be used because we don't want it to fall into, into the wrong hands, right? And then they realize that we've got this capability, right? So it's much like we talked about before. If you get a target in your sights, maybe you want to watch that target for a period of time to understand what it's capable of doing, what it's doing. You don't want to just let out, okay, well, we're going to. So, yeah, is it possible we developed a new propulsion system and we're just playing a game where we're saying, okay, we're still working on hypersonics, and air breathing engines, and we're trying to see what we can do here, and meanwhile we've got this in our back pocket, right, waiting for someday. It's a possibility. In my mind, I think, hey, if that's the case, good on them for being smart enough to be that clever and also to be able to keep a secret.
Is that more plausible than it coming from another planet, in your opinion? Or another dimension, or whatever the explanation is?
You know what? That's a great question. You should have your own podcast. Yeah, is it more plausible?